The city of Los Angeles was unusually quiet. A cool autumn wind swept through the streets as lights glowed from apartment windows and restaurants prepared to close for the night. Inside a small independent movie theater, people laughed and took pictures. At the center of the crowd stood Keanu Reeves. He had spent the evening attending a charity screening for children recovering from serious illnesses. As always, he had refused special treatment. He greeted every fan, signed every autograph, and patiently listened to every story people wanted to tell him. That was simply who he was. To many people, he was a famous actor. To others, he was a symbol of kindness. But on this particular night, no one knew that his life was about to change forever. As the event ended, a young boy in a wheelchair approached him. The child could not have been older than 10. He held a small notebook. "Mr. Reeves." Keanu smiled warmly. "Yes, buddy. Can I have your autograph?" Of course. As Keanu signed the notebook, the boy asked another question. "Are you always this nice?" The people nearby laughed softly. Keanu looked at the child and smiled. "I try my best." The boy looked down. "My mom says kind people get tired because they carry everyone's sadness." For a brief second, Keanu became quiet. The words touched him because lately he had been tired, very tired. For several months, he had experienced strange symptoms. Exhaustion, dizziness, sleepless nights, frequent headaches. But he ignored them. There was always another project, another charity event, another person who needed encouragement. He had convinced himself that he simply needed rest, nothing more. He handed the notebook back. The boy smiled. "You should take care of yourself too." Keanu nodded. "I'll remember that." He didn't know those would become the most important words he heard that night. An hour later, Keanu left the theater. The streets were nearly empty. His driver had the night off because Keanu preferred driving himself. He loved ordinary moments, the quiet, the freedom. The feeling of being just another person on the road. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder. He turned on the windshield wipers. The lights of Los Angeles blurred into long streaks. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through his chest. He gripped the steering wheel. His breathing became difficult. He blinked several times. The streetlights seemed strangely bright. Then his vision became blurry. "What is happening?" he whispered. Another wave of pain hit him. This time it was stronger. He pulled the car toward the side of the road. His hands trembled. His breathing became faster. He tried reaching for his phone, but his fingers felt weak. The world around him seemed to spin. A young couple happened to be walking nearby. The woman looked toward the car. "Someone's inside." They rushed over. The man knocked on the window. "Sir, are you okay?" No answer. The woman suddenly recognized him. "Oh my goodness, that's Keanu Reeves." Keanu opened the door. He looked pale. Sweat covered his forehead. The young man immediately dialed emergency services. "Stay with us, sir." Keanu attempted to smile, but he couldn't. He could barely breathe. Within minutes, the sound of sirens echoed through the street. Paramedics arrived. One of them immediately recognized him, but professionalism came first. They checked his pulse, blood pressure, breathing. One paramedic looked concerned. "He's unstable." Another quickly prepared oxygen. Keanu's eyes slowly closed. "Sir, stay awake." But everything became dark. The ambulance rushed through the streets of Los Angeles. Inside, the medical team worked rapidly. Blood pressure dropping, pulse irregular. "Prepare the monitors." One paramedic looked at the readings and frowned. "This doesn't make sense." Another checked again. The numbers were unusual, extremely unusual. Keanu regained consciousness for a brief moment. He looked around. "Hospital?" he whispered. Double quotes, "Yes." "Mr. Reeves?" He nodded weakly. Then he lost consciousness again. The paramedics exchanged worried looks. Something was very wrong, and none of them understood why. At the hospital emergency entrance, doctors and nurses were already waiting. The ambulance doors opened. Male, 51 years old. Sudden collapse. Irregular vital signs. Severe weakness. The medical team immediately moved him inside. The emergency room became a whirlwind of activity. Machines beeped. Nurses rushed between stations. Doctors issued instructions. One physician looked at the monitor, then looked again. He frowned. Repeat these readings. Another doctor. Check. Silence. Then. That can't be. Right? The numbers were strange. Not dangerous in the usual way. Just unexpected. As though something hidden had been affecting his body for a very long time. Tests were ordered. Blood work. Scans. Monitoring. Everything. The staff worked for hours. Meanwhile, word began to spread. The news moved quickly. By midnight, social media was flooded with messages praying for Keanu Reeves. Please be okay. One of the kindest people in Hollywood. Outside the hospital, fans began gathering. Some carried flowers, some held candles. Others simply stood quietly. No one knew what had happened, but everyone hoped he would recover. Inside the hospital, things became more serious. A senior doctor entered the room. He studied the test results, then looked at Keanu. Then back at the results. His expression changed. This is unusual. What is it? A nurse asked. I'm not sure yet. Another doctor joined him. They reviewed the information. Together. Both became silent because the numbers suggested something no one expected, something that required immediate attention. But before making conclusions, they needed more information. More tests were ordered. The machines continued running. Hours passed. Rain continued falling outside. The city slept, but the hospital did not. At 3 a.m, Keanu finally opened his eyes. The room was dimly lit. Machines quietly beeped beside him. A nurse noticed. Mr. Reeves. He blinked. Where am I? You're in the hospital. He looked confused. What happened? You collapsed. He tried sitting up. The nurse gently stopped him. Please rest. He stared at the ceiling. For the first time in many years, he felt completely helpless. He remembered the pain. The rain. The ambulance. Then the little boy's words returned to him. Kind people get tired because they carry everyone's sadness. A small smile appeared, then disappeared. He suddenly felt tears in his eyes, not because he was afraid, but because he realized something. For years, he had cared for everyone around him, yet he had ignored himself, ignored the exhaustion, ignored the pain, ignored every warning his body had given him. The nurse noticed his expression. Are you okay? He looked at her. I think I've been tired for a very long time. She smiled kindly. Then maybe this is your body's way of asking you to slow down. He said nothing, because deep down, she might be right. A few minutes later, 3 doctors entered the room. They looked serious. One of them pulled up a chair. Mr. Reeves, we're still conducting tests. Keanu nodded. Is it bad? The doctor chose his words carefully. We found something unusual. Silence. What kind of unusual? The doctor took a deep breath. We're not ready to make conclusions yet, another doctor added. But what we discovered may explain why you've been feeling exhausted for months. Keanu stared at them. The room suddenly felt colder. He had expected stress. Overwork. Lack of sleep, but the expressions on their faces suggested something much bigger. What did you find? He asked quietly. The senior doctor looked directly at him, then said words that changed everything. Mr. Reeves, your test results show signs of a condition we did not expect to see. Silence filled the room. What condition? The doctor hesitated. We need one final examination before we can explain. Keanu looked at the machines. At the rain outside the window. At the faces of the doctors. For the first time in many years, he felt genuinely afraid, because everyone in the room looked shocked at whatever they had discovered was something none of them had expected. Morning arrived slowly over Los Angeles. The rain had stopped, but dark clouds still hung over the city. Inside the hospital room, everything was quiet except for the soft beeping of medical monitors. Keanu Reeves sat upright in his bed, staring out the window. He had barely slept. The doctor's words kept repeating in his mind. We found something unusual. We need one final examination. It may explain why you've been exhausted for months. For the first time in years, he didn't know what tomorrow looked like. Usually, his life was planned. Film schedules. Interviews. Charity work. Travel. Meetings. Everything moved quickly. Now, time felt strangely slow. Every minute seemed heavy. A gentle knock interrupted his thoughts. The senior physician entered the room. He carried a folder. He smiled politely. Good morning. Mr. Reeves, morning. How are you feeling? Keanu looked at him. Tired. The doctor nodded. That's understandable. A long silence followed. Then Keanu finally asked the question that had been living in his mind all night. What did you find? The doctor sat down. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened the folder. Over the past several hours, we've reviewed all your test results. Keanu remained calm. Years in the entertainment industry had taught him patience, but inside, his heart was racing. The doctor continued, your collapse was not caused by a heart attack. Keanu looked surprised. Not my heart? No. Then what happened? The doctor looked at him carefully. For a long time, your body has been under extreme physical and emotional stress. Keanu remained silent. The doctor continued, stress alone doesn't usually cause someone to collapse this way. So we looked deeper. He placed the folder on the table. We discovered something that many people never realize. Keanu waited. The doctor smiled. Gently, you've been living with severe exhaustion and chronic sleep deprivation for years. Silence. Keanu blinked. That's it? The doctor nodded. It's much more serious than it sounds. He opened another page. Your body has been sending warning signs for a very long time. Double quotes, headaches, dizziness, difficulty concentrating, muscle weakness, memory problems, irregular sleeping patterns, extreme fatigue. You ignored all of them. Keanu looked away because it was true. He had ignored them again and again. Another doctor entered the room. She joined the conversation. Mr. Reeves, many people think exhaustion simply means being tired. She paused. But prolonged exhaustion can affect nearly every part of the body. Keanu listened quietly. It can affect your immune system, your concentration, your emotional health, your physical strength, even your ability to recover from stress. She smiled kindly. Your body didn't fail overnight. It was asking for help for a very long time. The room became silent. Keanu slowly looked toward the window. Memories began appearing in his mind. The days he slept only a few hours, the long flights, the late night filming, the endless work, the events, the obligations, the interviews, the responsibilities, and all the times people had asked, are you okay? He had always answered the same way. I'm fine. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe he hadn't been fine for a very long time. The doctor closed the folder. The good news is that we found this. Before it became even more serious, Keanu looked back at him. So, I'm going to recover. The doctor smiled. Yes, the relief in the room was immediate. For the first time since arriving at the hospital, Keanu exhaled deeply. He hadn't realized how afraid he had become. The doctor continued, but your recovery requires something difficult. What? You need to stop. Keanu almost laughed. Stop? Yes. No projects. No. No traveling. No. No work. Not for now. The doctor smiled. Your body needs rest. Keanu looked unconvinced. The doctor continued, Mr. Reeves, you have spent decades taking care of your responsibilities. Now you have to learn how to take care of yourself. Those words stayed in the room because they were simple, but true. A few hours later, news of his condition became public. Immediately, messages poured in from around the world. Fans posted photos. Actors shared memories. Directors sent their support. Thousands of people wrote, get well soon. Keanu, thank you for your kindness. Take all the time you need. Outside the hospital, more people gathered. No shouting. No chaos. Just quiet support. Some held flowers. Some held candles. Others simply stood together. A nurse looked out the window. I've never seen anything like this. Another smiled. People really love him. They did, because for years, stories about Keanu's kindness had traveled across the world. Stories about helping strangers. Stories about donating quietly. Stories about treating everyone with respect. The hospital staff felt something unusual. It was as if an entire city had come together for one man. Later that afternoon, the hospital received an unexpected visitor. An elderly janitor named Miguel entered Keanu's room. He looked nervous. He held a small paper bag. The nurse stopped him. Sir, are you family? No, a friend. Miguel smiled. I don't think he remembers me. The nurse looked confused. Then why are you here? The old man looked at the bag in his hands. Years ago, he helped me. The nurse's expression softened. She allowed him inside. Keanu looked up. The old man smiled. Hello. Miguel approached slowly. You probably don't remember me. Keanu studied his face. No, I'm sorry. The man laughed softly. I didn't think you would. He placed the paper bag on the table. Many years ago, my wife became sick. Keanu listened. I was working the jobs. I couldn't afford her medication. His eyes became emotional. I was sitting outside a pharmacy, trying to figure out what to do. He smiled. You happened to walk by. Keanu looked confused. You sat beside me. The room became quiet. You listened to my story. Miguel's voice trembled. Then you went inside the pharmacy. I paid for my wife's medicine. Silence. The old man smiled. You didn't ask for my name. You didn't take pictures. You didn't tell anyone. You simply said. His voice shook. I hope she feels better soon. Tears appeared in the old man's eyes. My wife lived another 7 years. The room became completely silent. Keanu looked stunned because he genuinely didn't remember. There had been many moments like that in his life, small acts of kindness that he never thought about again. Miguel continued, when I heard you were here, I wanted to say thank you. He pushed the paper bag forward. I baked bread this morning. Keanu looked at the bag, then at the old man. His eyes became emotional. You came all this way for me. Miguel smiled. You once showed up for my family. He pointed toward the window. Today, all those people outside are showing up for yours. Neither man spoke, because sometimes gratitude cannot be explained. It can only be felt. After Miguel left, Keanu sat alone. The room suddenly felt different. For years, he had tried to do small good things, never expecting anything in return. Yet, here he was in a hospital bed, surrounded by kindness, people he knew, people he didn't know, all wishing him well. He slowly looked toward the ceiling. A thought entered his mind. How many times had he encouraged others to rest, to heal, to take care of themselves? Yet he had never followed his own advice. The irony made him smile. Then the smile faded because he suddenly realized something else. He was exhausted not only physically, he was exhausted emotionally. For years, he had carried grief, loss, pain, memories, responsibilities, and he had simply kept moving, always moving, never stopping. Maybe his body had finally forced him to do something he had avoided for years. Rest. That evening, a young nurse entered his room. She appeared nervous. Mr. Reeves. Yes. May I ask you something? He smiled. Sure. She hesitated. Why are you always kind? He laughed softly. I don't know if I'm always kind. She smiled. Everyone says you are. Keanu became thoughtful. Then he answered, because everyone is fighting a battle you cannot see. The nurse nodded. He looked out the window. I've had difficult moments in life. She remained silent. So when I meet people, I try to remember that they may be carrying pain too. The nurse smiled. That's beautiful. Keanu looked at her. No. What? It's necessary. She looked confused. He continued, kindness doesn't make pain disappear, but it reminds people they aren't carrying it alone. The nurse became emotional. Because she worked long hours, she often felt invisible, yet those simple words meant something to her. Before leaving, she smiled. I hope you remember your own advice. Keanu laughed. I think that's what everyone has been trying to tell me. Late that night, another doctor entered. He carried new reports. Everything looked positive. Recovery was progressing well. The doctor smiled. You'll likely be discharged in a few days. That's good. The doctor nodded. But there's one condition. Keanu laughed. Another condition? Yes. What? The doctor smiled. You must promise to slow down. Keanu looked at him. Then smiled. I'll try. The doctor shook his head. No. What? You need to promise. Both men laughed. Finally, Keanu nodded. I promise. The doctor smiled. Good. As he walked toward the door, he stopped. By the way, yes. The little boy from the theater came earlier. Keanu looked surprised. He did. He left something for you. The doctor handed him a folded piece of paper. After he left, Keanu slowly opened it. Inside was a drawing. It showed a man standing under rain with an umbrella. Beside him was a small child. Above them, written in large letters, were simple words, even heroes need rest. Keanu stared at the picture for several seconds. He said nothing. Then he smiled. and for the first time since arriving at the hospital. He cried, not from fear, not from sadness, but because sometimes the simplest truths are the hardest to accept. He looked toward the dark sky outside the window. Tomorrow would be different. Maybe, for the first time in years, he would stop running. Maybe for the first time in years, he would learn how to heal. But he had no idea that one final encounter was about to change his life even more. Because the next morning, someone unexpected would walk into his hospital room carrying a secret that would inspire him in ways he never imagined. The first rays of sunlight slipped through the hospital window for the first time in several days. The sky above Los Angeles was completely clear inside the room. Keanu Reeves was awake. He had slept peacefully. No cameras. No interviews. No schedules. Just silence. The drawing from the little boy still rested on the table beside him. Even heroes need rest. He looked at the words again and smiled. It was amazing how a simple sentence could carry so much truth. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Come in. The door slowly opened. A nurse entered. Behind her stood a young man in his early 20s. He looked nervous. He carried a backpack and a small notebook. The nurse smiled. He asked if he could meet you. Keanu nodded. Of course. The young man stepped inside. Mr. Reeves, my name is Daniel. Nice to meet you. Daniel, the young man swallowed nervously. I don't want to disturb you. You aren't. Daniel smiled slightly. Then he took a deep breath. I came here because of something you did for me. Keanu laughed softly. I'm beginning to hear that a lot. Daniel smiled. 3 years ago, I was sitting alone in a train station. Keanu listened carefully. I had just lost my father. The room became quiet. I had also lost my job. His eyes became emotional. I didn't know what to do with my life. He looked at Keanu. You sat beside me again. Another stranger. Another forgotten moment. You asked me if I was okay. Keanu remained silent. I said no. Daniel smiled sadly. You stayed with me for almost an hour. He wiped his eyes. You told me something I'll never forget. He opened his notebook. Inside, written carefully in black ink, was a sentence. He read it aloud. The world can break your heart, but it cannot decide who you become. Silence filled the room. Daniel smiled. I wrote those words down. He looked up. That night changed my life. Keanu looked genuinely surprised. What happened? I went home. He smiled. I decided to keep going. The young man took another deep breath. I returned to school. I found a new job. I started volunteering, and next month, he laughed softly, I graduate from nursing school. Keanu's eyes widened. Really? Daniel nodded. I wanted to become the kind of person who sits beside someone during their worst day. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Daniel smiled. You taught me that. Keanu's eyes filled with tears, because he honestly didn't remember that conversation. To him, it had been one small moment. To someone else, it had become a new beginning. Daniel continued. When I heard you were in the hospital, I had to come. He looked around the room. I wanted you to know something. What? You matter. Silence. You've spent years helping people. He smiled. Now it's our turn to remind you that your kindness mattered. Keanu lowered his eyes. For years, he had never expected anything in return for helping others. He simply believed kindness was the right thing to do. But sitting there, he suddenly understood something beautiful. Every act of kindness leaves a mark. Sometimes you never see it. Sometimes you never hear about it. But it exists. Somewhere. Inside someone's memory. Inside someone's story. Inside someone's heart. After Daniel left, Keanu remained quiet. The hospital room suddenly felt different. Almost sacred. He looked at the drawing. The notebook. The flowers. The messages. And then something extraordinary happened. The nurse entered again. Mr. Reeves. Yes? She looked amused. There are people downstairs. Fans? She laughed. Not exactly. He looked confused. Then who? She smiled. People whose lives you somehow touched. He blinked. What? There are teachers, a taxi driver, a former waiter, a security guard, to college students, a retired woman, and a little girl. Keanu stared at her. Why are they here? The nurse smiled. They all say the same thing. What? They came to say thank you. He couldn't believe it. Later that afternoon, The hospital arranged something special. One by one, people visited his room. A taxi driver explained how Keanu once paid for his car repairs. A waitress remembered receiving encouragement when she wanted to quit school. A former security guard remembered being treated with respect during a difficult time. A college student explained how one brief conversation inspired him to pursue his dreams. Every story was different, but they all shared one thing. Kindness. Small moments. Simple gestures. Words of encouragement. Listening. Respect. Nothing grand. Nothing dramatic. Just humanity. Hours passed. Keanu listened to every person. Sometimes he laughed. Sometimes he cried. Often, he simply sat in silence because he realized something profound. A person's true success is not measured by awards. Or money. Or fame. It is measured by the lives they touched. As evening approached, the little girl finally entered. She could not have been older than 8. She held a small flower. She walked slowly toward his bed. Hi. She handed him the flower. This is for you. Thank you. She smiled. My mommy said you help people. I try. The little girl looked at him carefully. Are you sick? He smiled. A little. She nodded seriously. When I'm sick, my mommy makes me soup. He laughed. Soup? She nodded. It makes everything better. The room laughed. Then she became serious again. My daddy died last year. Silence. But before he died, he watched your movies. She smiled. He said you looked like a kind person. Tears filled her eyes. So when I heard you were sick, I prayed for you. The room became completely silent. The little girl reached into her pocket. She pulled out a folded piece of paper. I drew this. He opened it. It showed a large heart surrounded by many small hearts. Above them were the words, the people you helped become your family. Keanu stared at the drawing. Then he looked at the little girl. What is your name? Sophia. He smiled. Thank you, Sophia. She hugged him, and for several seconds, nobody moved. The nurses quietly wiped tears from their eyes. Because the moment felt bigger than a hospital room. It felt like life itself had paused to remind everyone of something important. Love returns. Kindness returns. Compassion returns. Sometimes in ways we never expect. That night, Keanu could not sleep. He sat beside the window. The city lights stretched endlessly into the distance. He thought about his life, the losses, the joys, the struggles, the grief, the success, the loneliness. Everything. Then he thought about the people who had visited. A taxi driver, a student, a child, a janitor. A future nurse. Ordinary people, yet every one of them carried extraordinary stories, and somehow their paths had crossed his. He smiled softly. Perhaps life wasn't about becoming famous. Perhaps it wasn't even about being remembered. Perhaps life was simply about leaving people a little better than we found them. A knock interrupted his thoughts. The senior doctor entered. Can't sleep? Not tonight. The doctor sat beside him, thinking a lot. The doctor smiled. Good. Keanu laughed. Most people tell you not to overthink. Sometimes thinking is how we heal. Silence filled the room. Then the doctor spoke. You know, when you arrived here, everyone was worried. Keanu nodded. But I think something beautiful happened. What? You finally stopped. He smiled. And because you stopped, you got to see something most people never see. What is that? The doctor looked at him. The difference they made? Keanu looked confused. No, the doctor smiled. The difference you made. Silence. You spent years planting seeds of kindness. He looked toward the door. This week, you watched them bloom. Neither man spoke for several seconds because there was nothing to add. The doctor was right. The next morning, the doctors brought wonderful news. He was healthy enough to leave. The entire hospital staff gathered in the hallway. Nurses smiled. Doctor shook his hand. Orderlies applauded. Even patients looked out from their rooms. Keanu laughed. This feels like a movie. A nurse smiled. No, she pointed toward the crowd. This is your life. As he walked toward the exit, he noticed something extraordinary. Outside the hospital stood hundreds of people. Flowers. Signs. Cards. Smiles. No screaming. No chaos. Just warmth. A reporter asked, Mr. Reeves, after this experience, what have you learned? He looked at the crowd for several seconds. He said nothing. Then he smiled. I learned that being strong doesn't mean carrying everything alone. The crowd became quiet. I learned that resting isn't weakness. I learned that asking for help isn't failure. He looked at the people standing before him, and I learned something else. What? He smiled. You never really know how much a small act of kindness matters. Silence, hold the door, listen to someone, encourage someone, sit beside someone who is hurting. He looked emotional because one day you may discover that the smallest thing you did became the biggest thing in someone else's life. Many people began crying. He continued, we live in a world that moves very fast, but kindness asks us to slow down. It asks us to notice people. It asks us to remember that everyone is carrying something. He smiled, and sometimes he looked at the little girl Sophia standing near the front. The people you helped become your family. The crowd applauded. Some cried, some smiled. Some hugged each other because the words felt true. Simple. Human. Real. Before leaving, Keanu looked back at the hospital one final time. A few days earlier, he had entered those doors frightened and exhausted. Now, he walked out with something much greater than answers. Perspective. Gratitude. And a renewed understanding of life. He wasn't leaving because he had become stronger. He was leaving because he had finally accepted something he had forgotten. Even those who spend their lives helping others need care. Even heroes need rest. And sometimes the greatest discovery isn't a medical diagnosis at all. It's realizing that love, kindness, and compassion create invisible connections between people, connections that remain long after a conversation ends, long after a favor is forgotten, long after a difficult season passes, because every act of kindness becomes part of someone else's story. And sometimes it comes back to remind us that we were never alone.